Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's InsideLocal webinar. This is the first instalment of the current InsideLocal series, and I think we're starting off with a real cracker. In today's webinar, we will be debating the impact of Google's Pigeon update on search visibility and on lead generation for local businesses. I'm just going to flick the presentation to presentation mode. Okay, that's swapped over. We have three excellent speakers joining us today, real experts in the local field, and I'm delighted they're here. We'll give them a proper introduction in just a minute, but a big thank you to them, and more importantly, a big thank you to everyone who's taken the time to register and set aside some time in their busy day to be with us today. We've had over 1,300 registrations for today's webinar, which is really a fantastic response, and hopefully that bodes well for the popularity of the series moving forward. Before we get started with the kind of Q&A, I just want to run through a few things so you know what to expect and you know how you can interact with us. These are the topics and questions we kind of pre-baked that we're putting to our three panelists. So I'll just leave them on the screen for 20 seconds or so you can scan your eye across them so you know what's coming up. Once you've done the kind of the more sort of formal official kind of debate section, there will be a chance for kind of questions to be asked of the panelists. You'll find a question module in your GoToWebinar control panel. A few people have already put messages there already. Please use that to fire your questions through, and also if you have any kind of issues with sound, etc., you can put those there. Linda and Colan are working behind the scenes. They'll be helping to answer your questions, provide links and resources, and any help. So like I said, some of the questions will be raised up to our panelists at the end of the kind of debate phase to go to the kind of Q&A bit. There's also a live chat box should anyone wish to kind of send messages kind of to all the other attendees. If anyone fancies tweeting this, please use the hashtag InsideLocal. The webinar is being recorded and will be available this Friday. You can download it or view it on brightlocal.com as well as the local search forum. The slide deck is available now on slideshare.net. And there's a follow-up email, so in case you missed some of those links or in case you're not able to kind of stay for the full sort of 60-minute duration, we're going to send a follow-up email around on Friday with all the details, links to the webinar recording, links to the slide deck. So please just relax, enjoy the debate, listen to the dulcet tones of our three panelists. Please pose a question if you want to, or just kind of passively listen in. It's absolutely up to you. We're actually going to be running some polls during the webinar. The idea is that we've probably got to have nearly 1,000 marketeers, SEOs, SMBs kind of listening in today. This is a chance for us to kind of understand how you see these changes. We're also going to get the opinions and viewpoints of the panelists, but we also want to know how these things are affecting you and how you see them. We'll be kind of collating the results of the polls during the webinar itself and then sharing those after the Q&A. So you get some almost real-time feedback what the results of those polls is. So we have our three panelists. I'm just going to give them a quick introduction. Obviously, we've got Andrew Shotland, Joy Hawkins, and Mike Blumenthal, all of which I'm sure are unknown to most people, but just in case they're not. Andrew first. Andrew's knowledge of local search and local online marketing really can't be rivaled by many. He has extensive experience working with IYPs, but also as a local search consultant. He currently runs his own agency based in California, and he's a contributor to the local search ranking factor study, to Search Engine Land, as well as his own blogs. Joy is a digital product director at Impresio Marketing, who are a very successful digital marketing agency with their headquarters in Toronto. Joy is also a contributor to the Ranking Factor study. She's a Google Places forum top contributor, and she's very well known among many of the kind of online forums. So it's great to have her with us today. And many of you will be familiar with Mike's blog, which is dedicated to Google Plus Local, Google My Business, Maps, etc. Anything that's in the sphere of Google Plus Local. Mike deals with it. He's often invited by Google to beta test new features and changes, and he also conducts a lot of his own research, which I hope he'll be sharing some of the findings of that with us today. So it's great to have you all here. I really appreciate you taking the time. We also have a few people behind the scenes helping things kind of run smoothly. We've got Linda Buquet, who runs the local search forum, who's one of our co-promoters of InsideLocal. They provide invaluable advice in the site and support. It's great to have Linda here today. Linda's daughter is sort of imminently due to give birth, so it's touch and go whether Linda will be with us today, but we're glad that she is, and many congratulations and best wishes to your family, Linda, and I just hope that your daughter holds on for one more hour so we have you with us. Working with Linda answering the question and providing help is Colan Nielsen. Colan works with Joy at Impresio. He's a contributor to the local search ranking factor study, also a Google top contributor. And so, Colan, thank you very much for helping us out today. And then there's me, last and definitely least. I run BrightLocal. We have many of our customers listening today, so thank you guys for putting your faith in us and for joining us today. Okay, so enough of the introductions. Let's get started. The first thing I want to do is just run our first poll. And obviously, with 1,000 people listening in, we have an opportunity to gather some really useful data here. So please do take part. I'm going to put the poll on the screen now. The first question is, do you think that Pigeon has delivered good changes for both businesses and searchers? Great. Okay, we're up around 60% now. So I'm just going to close the poll there. Like I said, we'll share the results of that a little bit later on. So the first question we want to tackle today is, what are the headline changes that Pigeon has brought about? Andrew, why don't I throw that over to you to answer, and then we'll open it up to the other panelists.
Well, the headline changes were, it's been quite some time, but when in the aftermath of the rollout, what we saw was a reduction in local packs across a variety of different categories of local search results, particularly in real estate, which we have a lot of work in. We saw a dramatic decrease in the pack ranking, in the local packs appearing in the queries. We also saw a decrease in the radius of the results that were returned. So locations that were not within a fairly narrow radius didn't seem to make it into the pack results as much. So what looked like Google was serving up more of a mobile result to desktop users. And then a variety of crazy bugs that we saw and still see that I'm sure we'll dig into.
Okay, that's great, Andrew. Thank you. Joy, do you want to jump in there and elaborate a little more on what Andrew said?
Yeah, so the primary things that I've seen is a big increase in spam. So there's been a lot of listings that have surfaced since Pigeon that are dead phone numbers or fake addresses, businesses that never ranked before. The other thing that kind of I've seen a lot of is that there's no consistency anymore in what people see in the search results. So I had a slide that kind of illustrated this. I did a poll yesterday on Google Plus with a few people, just asking them if they could send me screenshots of what they saw when they typed in personal training baby Texas into Google. There's 5 different results pages that came up. You can kind of see there different businesses kind of shuffled it, and there was a few that actually didn't appear at all for some people and appeared for others. It's kind of interesting, and these people were all over the USA. So there's some people in California, some in like Colorado, some in Florida. And these were the results we got. So this is something I've seen an increase of since Pigeon specifically. And I know like a business I work with down in Florida, with the spam issue, I would report people that were obviously not real businesses. I'd call the phone numbers attached to the listing, they were dead. And every time I'd report a listing, another spammy one would pop up in its place. So definitely for certain industries, I'm seeing a lot more spam than before, which is never a good thing.
Sure. We're going to tackle spam specifically in a second. Mike, with this kind of sort of increasing kind of variety and sort of difference what people are seeing, what's your take on what might be driving that?
Well, as Google reduces the radius, they're struggling for inventory. That's one issue, right? So as you reduce the radius, there's fewer relevant results, and so they're pulling out what they have to pull out. I think typically when Google changes these things, spam abatement is low on their list. They'll get around to it. They did with Hummingbird. The Hummingbird stuff we saw has dissipated. I think you'll see the same thing happen with Pigeon as they roll those changes down to the pack. I think Andrew and Joy summarized the changes pretty well. Obviously, one of the things you see with reducing radius is a change of where searchers are coming from for any given site. So on the 2 sites I analyzed in detail, we saw maybe a drop in one area, but a dramatic increase in the others. And in market, in other words, when you drew their specific markets, we saw really not real much change. Now, they may have lost out of market search results, like people searching outside of Buffalo or from Ohio or Canada maybe changed, but the in-market stuff stayed about the same. So I think Google's goal was to net it out. I mean, but obviously with this kind of massive changes, it doesn't net out. And I think what it does do, though, is shows more results in local. I think one of the struggles Google has is making sure everybody shows up some, and I think this is an effort to do that.
What do you think? What was Google's intention behind the Pigeon rollout? What do you think their kind of the number one or number one or two aims was?
Well, I think make more money. This is the American way. We live in the grand old United States, and capitalism is at the fore, and Google has tremendous demands on their growth. So I think this reduction of pins and really helps AdWords, I think. So.
Yeah, and to that note, what we've heard from some big brands that we work with is the organic traffic, multi-location brands, the organic traffic went down, not huge numbers, but percentage points. And strangely enough, the click-through rate on their AdWords campaigns increased by big percentage points. Put on your tinfoil hat and make do with that.
It doesn't take a tinfoil hat to realize that Google has the same demands on them as any other corporation, right? That's to generate more profit. And they have the best real estate in the world from which to do it.
Maybe
a saran wrap that.
Thanks.
Okay, that's great, guys. That's a great kind of, sort of opening silo. Next question is, which ranking factors have therefore gained and lost the most impact since the Pigeon update? Mike, you were kind of on a roll there. Why don't you carry on with that one?
You start me talking, I'm always on a roll. It's sort of, I was born that way. I started this at age 6 months. So obviously brand has, it came to the fore in Hummingbird, and I think it's reinforced with Pigeon, where when there's even a close match to a brand, Google's going to show that predominantly or show those results. So that's match between a business name and a query seems to have had a positive impact on showing. In a broad sense, I would posit that Google has moved the local algorithm totally over the knowledge graph, and what we're seeing is an effort to reproduce the old local algorithm in a new context. And as they work through these bugs and changes, but I think they're creating one big knowledge graph algorithm for all their entities, and I think that's what we're seeing. So I don't know if there's gains or losses. And I think their goal was to have it relatively neutral as they shift it. Now, that's never possible.
Yeah, we saw a very distinct weird brand algorithm, or what I'll call an overweighting of the brand algorithm, where you would search for a non-local brand, and Google would produce local results that had the similar words in the brand name. And that was, to me, an indicator that they had kind of screwed up their brand algorithm.
So this brand algorithm, is that then, is that actually a sort of subset of their kind of main algorithm? What are we looking for here? How does that kind of work kind of behind the scenes with them?
We first saw it come to the fore in Hummingbird, and it managed to surface a lot of exact match spam results. But we've seen this before in local. There's a dial that's sort of somewhere in this grand system that they're tweaking that balances keyword searches against company names. And since Hummingbird, the company name side of it's been tweaked way up, and that seemed to get reinforced with Pigeon. I think Google thinks quality brands are the solution to the rough that is on the internet. So you just see a lot of results that seem to reflect a mistaking of brand query for brand query.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Unfortunately,
hey, Mike, your microphone got really bad. You sound like a board.
Echoey. Okay, so we'll let kind of Mike sort that out. George, do you want to contribute to that question around which ranking factors you think have kind of gained and lost impact?
Yeah, there's two big ones that I've seen a big increase in. One is the age of the listing itself. So I've seen cases where, especially for dentists, is where I've seen it the most. There'll be a listing for a doctor that has nothing good on it. It's not even linked up to a website. There's I've seen spam listings where there's virtually no citations whatsoever for the phone number listed. All the kind of normal ranking factors are missing. The only thing that's really working in its favor is that the page has been around for ages. How I was able to kind of verify that is a few of them that I looked at had reviews on them that dated like 4 to 5 years back. So obviously the page has been around for a long time. That's the number one thing that I'm seeing, and kind of my recommendation that I'm making to businesses is it's even more important now that if you're working with some type of SEO company to make sure that you have access to your listing. Several cases where businesses will call us up and stuff, and the company that they were working with deleted their listing. And obviously that's always been detrimental, but I think it's even more so detrimental now that the age of the listing is so important. And then the second thing that I'm seeing an increase in is organic ranking is way more of an important factor than it was before. So lots of websites that had like manual penalties on them that had terrible organic ranking used to be possible for them to rank really well in the pack. It's becoming harder, obviously, with Pigeon to rank if you don't have a good organic ranking, as well as all the places factors. We're seeing a drop in businesses that have that scenario.
So, sort of on that sort of last point, then, a lot of sort of coverage has been put on the fact that kind of organic factors have been upweighted versus kind of pure local factors. Do you kind of concur with that? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. In fact, I'll actually do the counterpoint to the age being a factor. It may in fact be a factor, but we've set up plenty of brand new test spam results that got ranked within 24 hours for like pretty decent keywords. And so what we're seeing is it's the words in the domain, it's the words, it's the getting some links or citations, and having a location that is kind of centroid-ish. So, for example, we set up a few fake businesses in like virtual office parks, and like I said, within 24 hours they ranked #1 in the pack for the keywords they're targeting. And that kind of speaks to more classic organic stuff combined with this location issue.
What sites were you linking? What domains were you linking those to?
Just typical citations, Yellow Pages sites.
Okay, so because I saw a bit of research you published about you kind of altering the landing page URL you were kind of pointing to, and how that actually kind of moved the kind of pack box.
Yeah, that was a separate thing where so for those who didn't see on Search Engine Land last month, I published a post where I took my own corporate Google My Business page and changed the website link on the page first to different pages on my website, and that changed the position of the pack in the SERP. And then I took the #1 ranked URL for that SERP and changed that to the link on my Google My Business page, and it pushed the pack up to the top of the SERP within about 2 minutes. So that said to me that domain authority, or links, basically are pretty much one of the dominating factors in this algorithm.
I was really interested to see the results of that. A second ago, you sort of mentioned sort of citations in there. That's sort of given that we're talking about local here, that's really the first kind of pure local signal that anyone's mentioned. People have talked about them kind of degrading in terms of the impact they have. But are you still saying that a good rounded solution that involves links and as well as citations is still important?
Well, let's like not get caught up in terminology. To me, citations are just links, right? So they do have a certain specialness to them in that maybe they're a bunch of directory sites that have some special resonance in Google's local algorithm. But for this spam case that we set up, it's basically just a way to get a quick bunch of links. Is just get your citations up.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's go on to the next poll now. So, given what you've heard a little bit now, the question is, how have you changed your local search strategy since the Pigeon update? We're going to launch the poll now. If everyone could take part, that would be much appreciated. Okay, I'm going to close that poll now. Thanks everyone who took part in that. So the next question, and I've heard this one to Joy actually. Joy, who have been the biggest winners and losers post Pigeon? So which type of businesses have been affected the most positively, and which have really suffered from it?
Yeah, so I had a slide for this one for who's been negatively impacted. I looked at a lot of cases for businesses that literally vanished after Pigeon, so they were ranking, first, second, or third before Pigeon hit. They're nowhere to be found. They're not on the page. They're like pages back when you look through more detailed search results. And one of the things that I'm noticing, a pattern that's honestly, I'd say probably 90% of the cases I've looked at have this scenario. So I just thought for this webinar I'd go find a random example. It took me literally 2 minutes to find one. So this is just a random example I found with this law company here in Rochester, New York. So they were B before Pigeon hit, that screenshot on the left, and then after Pigeon they're nowhere. So they're not G, they're not F, they did drop a little bit, they completely fell off. So the pattern that I'm noticing, if you go to the next slide, is when you look up the phone number for the business listing in Mapmaker, you'll see that there are, well, this guy's got several practitioner listings. There's lots of lawyers that have listings there. But there are ones that have this closed mark on them, says place closed. And then to the right, there's a shot of what it looks like in Google Maps. It's permanently closed. There's a message on there. So like I said, a huge majority of the cases that I've seen that vanished have this scenario where there is a listing that exists with their phone number on it that is marked as closed. As kind of like an example of one of the things that I tried to fix it, if you go to the next slide, I had a business that contacted me about 3 weeks ago, and he was in this scenario. He's a personal trainer down in Katy, Texas, and the slide on the left is where he used to rank before Pigeon hit. So he was B, he was great. He follows all the kind of regular things. He had lots of citations, he had lots of reviews, all the things that you would think to rank. And then Pigeon hit and he just disappeared. So what I tried to do is, he had a closed listing, and by contacting Google Places support, I was able to get this relocation message to show on his listing. Now this is supposed to happen, I believe, for every business when they move. Like if you update the dashboard, it's supposed to have this really relocated message on it. I checked a whole bunch of businesses that we work with to see which ones had it and which ones don't. It's kind of like free for all. Some have it, some don't. So I contacted support. I said, listen, this is his old address. It's not closed. He's not a closed business. He's still around. He's just moved. So can you please put the relocation message on there? And the thing with the relocation message, I don't know what it does on the back end. I know that Mapmaker employees cannot add it. I know that RERs cannot add it. Also, people that answer the phones at Google Places support cannot add it. So it's someone, I think, higher up the chain at Google that can do it, which is why emailing support is pretty much the only way to get this on there, or using report a problem. But it connects the two things in a way that when you click on like the relocated to, it actually links to the new page for where he's at currently. And then when you now search in Mapmaker, his other listing is gone. It's like completely gone. It took about a day or two to disappear, but you no longer see it. There's no listing that says closed or anything. You can't even get to the listing for a lot of these pages a few days after this message shows up. So there's something that happens on the back end that connects the two listings. And as a result, this is where he's now appearing on Google. He went from being nowhere to now at least ranking on the first page in a matter of hours after this message appeared on his listing. So it's kind of a really interesting scenario I'm finding, but I would still stick by about 90% of the cases I've looked at have this scenario where they have a closed listing. And especially for practitioners out there, my advice would be, like, if you're working a law office or dentist where you have 6 or 7 listings, if you have one that's listed as closed, if it is actually a practitioner that no longer works there, this can be a little tricky. Obviously, you can't really do this. But to try and test it out, we actually did try this on a dentist and reopened a practitioner listing that technically doesn't work there anymore, just to see what would happen, and it shot to the first position. It was position A right away, and this business was another one that got killed by Pigeon. So very interesting thing that we were kind of working on.
So basically, this is obviously not a particular type of business necessarily. You're saying this is an issue with listings that are marked as closed, which tends to be more prevalent in a kind of service business or a practitioner-based business where people come and go more often, or people move location more often.
Yeah, the specific industries I've seen it for, I've seen insurance listings with this, dentists, lawyers, One was private investigator had this, personal trainers. Any business that technically moves or has practitioners coming and going would possibly be in this scenario.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Joy. Andrew, I read some research that you did around, again, about that kind of brand piece in terms of, I think it was multi-location businesses being affected negatively by this kind of brand spam that's kind of creeping in.
Yeah, I think it just, as we've all been looking at this stuff, I kept hearing from large multi-location companies that they had been negatively impacted by Pigeon. And I wasn't really seeing the same thing on more, smaller clients of ours, like 10 location type companies. In fact, I was seeing the opposite. They were doing much better. And I was trying to think about why that might be. And so just did some kind of thinking out loud on my blog about the fact, all the things we've been talking about, the fact that there's this strange, seemingly brand thing that's giving a lot of exact match domains prevalent. I think the case I used was MiamiMoverMoving.com was now #1 for Miami movers. And the fact that a lot of big brands also are located in what I call the cheap rent district, the darkness on the edge of town. Like Home Depot is, typically outside of the center of town. And so a lot of brands that might be set up that way might be negatively impacted by this shrinking of the radii. And then someone on Twitter, I forgot who that was, typed in that he also thought there was an issue with big brands that had not been migrated over to the new Google My Business dashboards yet. And because he seemed to think there was some advantage to ranking to have that set up. And so all of those things together seem to add up to a slightly negative result for larger multi-location brands.
Okay, that's great. We'll just move on to the next question. Mike, I'll put this one to you. Okay, so about location and proximity seems to have become more significant. What does this really mean, and how does this kind of impact local businesses?
Well, there's a number of impacts, right? It depends on your location and the prominent search phrases, right? If you're in the suburbs and people are predominantly looking in the city, you're in trouble. It's going to impact you negatively. The proximity, but just because you think the searches are in the city and you're in the suburbs doesn't mean you will be impacted negatively. When you go in and look, Google is delivering searchers closer to home now. And that's a big difference. So if you are located, like Andrew said, in an area where there are a lot of shoppers, you're going to be better off. If you're located in an area where there aren't a lot of shoppers, like you built in the industrial section of town because you thought Google could deliver customers, I think you're going to be worse off. So you need to understand where the searchers used to come from and where they're coming from now. I think that the real world criteria of location is starting to creep into Google, and I think that you hopefully are located in an area where there's searchers that are relevant to your business. It also means that, in mobile, that results shift, on a narrower radius. They do on the desktop as well. So, if you can't relocate and you can't open another office, you have to come up with another strategy if you've lost a lot of traffic due to this. I've seen people in the city do well. I've seen people in the suburbs do well. I've seen a couple net out, and I really just think that, you go to look, like Barbara Oliver, who was doing really well on Buffalo searches, which is the main town, is now doing really well on Cheektowaga searches, which is a suburb very near her, and it's one where there's a lot of good prospects. So while she totally died on the main search, she's doing really well on a different search, and it's netting out, adequately. It certainly points out the danger of being totally dependent on Google for your traffic. That's for sure.
So you're saying then obviously with the tightened radius and the kind of proximity being more based on the actual location of the searcher as opposed to the location of the business to the kind of traditional kind of centroid, that's obviously narrowing and affecting businesses outside of where searchers live and where they're kind of conducting those searches.
Right, at least through the pack, right? I mean, I think you can still impact it organically, and I think you should. So I think there's a tactic there, which is to go for long tail, localized organic results. And I published some results from Mediative, some eye tracking studies, and their results seem to indicate that searchers are more likely to click on organic results anyways. So perhaps it's in everybody's benefit in that situation.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I totally agree with that, Mike. We're seeing that in the data on our clients where even when they lost pack rankings for head terms, their organic went up because long tail more than made up for it. And we can see it on some specific clients where the Google My Business traffic is so, who cares? It's almost like worth ignoring, even local in some ways.
Part of the problem with that analysis, Andrew, is that we never really were able to measure calls that people just look at a search result and call. And so if you aren't tracking call volume, I'm getting a couple of emails while we're on here from people who contend that their call volume dropped dramatically, right? So if you're dependent on call volume, they may be a bigger impact in that situation.
Yeah, we're looking at some businesses where it definitely required a click to the website before you were going to pick up the phone, and it seemed to have like almost minimal impact.
Right. So that is a situation. It depends on what kind of business you have, right? Whether and how you respond to it, right? You may end up having to open another office.
Yeah, like an emergency tow truck guy could be screwed for sure.
Yeah, well, what would be your advice to someone in that situation? And someone who's they've done nothing wrong. This is their business relies on phone calls. There's less visibility of their phone number in pack results. What would be your sort of your kind of gut instinct and what you'd advise them to do?
Change careers.
Hire Joy.
I mean, firstly, as much as possible, you want to diversify your marketing, right? I really, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. It's critical. If they haven't felt this as an existential threat before, you're feeling it now, you have to recognize that Google does not have your interests at heart. They operate on their own interests. They claim it's the searcher's interest. When the searcher's interest correlates with their financial interest, that's when you see changes. And that's not your interest. And so you really have to understand that. So living your life trying to figure out how to survive on the edges of Google algorithm seems to me like a sucky existence. And I think, I would suggest a different way to go about it, whatever that means. And it's different in every industry, but I think as Google moves forward and local becomes more of a, inbound lead generation for them, it's going to get harder. It's not going to get easier.
With the kind of radius getting kind of tighter, then the location becoming much more sort of specific. Do you kind of advocate then that people should focus, and obviously kind of organic factors kind of growing in prominence, focusing more on kind of on-site optimization, building out your kind of location-specific pages, and really kind of deepening the work you do and kind of geolocating your business so it's found for all the neighborhoods around you? Would that be an area you might focus on?
I actually would focus one level above that. I would focus on making your business newsworthy. Right, I would focus on getting good press, good publicity, doing events, doing training, doing things that Google recognizes, but also will bring you business regardless of what Google recognizes and doesn't. I mean, I see that the era of, Google's got 15,000 engineers working on the problem of making search more like humans, right? Figuring out the edges of that and trying to figure out where you fit into that is a game you can't win long haul. The game you can win is traditional public relations translated to the internet. If you can do a job better at that, then Google picks those signals up, searchers pick those signals up. I think we need to get out of the mind space of trying to manipulate our way around the answer.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, mate. Joy, you had some slides on this actually. Why don't I just jump to your slide?
Yeah, so I know Andrew was talking a lot about big brands and stuff, so I'm kind of going to share what I've noticed for one particular brand. We deal a lot with the State Farm insurance agents, and one of the things I noticed is they're one of the big brands that uses a feed for all of their locations. This is a screenshot in Seattle of before and after, so you'll notice a huge difference in the map the radius. We searched pretty far from Seattle this morning. It was pretty far zoomed out, and I believe the businesses that showed up first kind of had, you could tell that they were ones that paid a lot of attention to the stuff. They had extra citations and all that additional features. They paid more attention to reviews, putting new photos on their listings, stuff like that. After Pigeon, we're seeing, obviously a huge difference in the radius. It's really zoomed in, really, really tight to the center of Seattle. And I think this is, obviously my theory on it is Google's starting to show more shorter radiuses for bigger brands because they're thinking, if they all offer the same thing, if you got a chain like McDonald's, and it doesn't matter which McDonald's you go to, they all offer you the same thing, wouldn't you want the one closest to you? So I'm seeing more so for branded searches than for just regular searches that there is a tightening of the radius. I think there was a screenshot I put after this just to compare of auto insurance Seattle. The same thing didn't happen with an auto insurance search. It's still pretty zoomed out. It was just for the branded search that we saw a huge change in the map. So we're seeing a lot of, for State Farm specifically, we're seeing a lot of agents that used to rank really well, but they're not really close to the city center, and they got completely shut out. In some cases, in smaller towns, they'll be like, where 4 or 5 agents exist. Google's now only showing like 2 results instead of even 3, because they really want the ones that are close to the center of the city. So it's kind of interesting and harder for, I think, the franchises or the business owners that are in this scenario to get ranked. But I think there is a correlation between the fact that there's every single business is claimed and every single business is set up similarly is causing Google to show the closest ones first.
It's interesting if I can jump in. We saw that effect, but instead of interpreting it as something to do with branded searches, our interpretation was we saw it when you explicitly put a city name in, it widened the radius, and when it was just implicit, so you just said auto insurance. I think even auto insurance doesn't even show a map for that particular query, but that's when we were seeing a much narrower radius.
Yeah, I'm seeing similar results with that type of searching as well, especially on mobile. Mobile's super local, so if you search anything on mobile, you're getting stuff that's in like a mile, 2 miles away. It seems to change if you move down street.
Does that vary for different business types? Then, there's also some businesses where location matters. A garage, for example, where it doesn't matter so much for, say, an accountant. How does kind of Google handle that kind of variation in different natures of businesses?
One of the big criteria is the density in the market, right? Google knows market density, and they aggregate X amount to achieve enough relevant results to be able to pick and choose decent top 7. So if there's bartending schools, there's only 1 per every 30 miles, the radius is going to be really big. If it's pizza shop, the radius is going to be small. So it's a dynamic process. It's not fixed. And it's different in every market. I mean, there might be some markets that have 20 bartending schools in the city center. Google's going to draw a narrow radius. This has always been the case. This hasn't changed. But the default, in other words, they seem to be happy with fewer relevant results from which to pick at this point. That was the big difference.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. We're going to move on to the next question, which you touched on already. It's around sort of spammy listings. A lot of spam's kind of crept back into the results. Mike, again, why don't you maybe kind of carry on with this? Why you think you're kind of seeing this happening?
Yeah, so, if you look at the big changes in local algorithms, they happen about every 12 to 18 months, right? So 2010, there was the blended results that came out, which demonstrated a shift towards web prominence as opposed to location prominence, at least in some of the listings. Early 2012, there was Venice. Late last year, August last year, there was Hummingbird, and now Pigeon. So I don't see these things, Google works on it on some sort of cycle, and we're seeing these updates episodically. I think in this switch, as they moved from, in 2012, they moved all of local into the knowledge graph. So instead of them being web results in which the knowledge entities were calculated every 6 weeks, these entities became fixed in the database, and then Google accretes ranking signals to them episodically. So anyways, as they move from web, location prominence, they had a bunch of barriers in place. They had things that stripped out the kind of spam we were seeing first in Hummingbird and now in Pigeon. And my theory is that, as they learn what's bad quality, as this new system learns what's bad quality, the spam will be reduced over time. It's annoying, but we're in the position where we see the annoying results. We don't see the 125 million businesses that are providing good results, typically. In other words, we don't have the full view. All we know is there's been a change, and we see bad results, and it's likely the bad results went from whatever, 1% to 3%. Who knows? But I think that Google will be re-implementing some of the stuff that was in the old algorithm as we move forward, as they did with Hummingbird. I mean, Hummingbird, the real bad Hummingbird stuff is mostly gone, and what you're seeing left is a lot of branded one boxes as a result. But I think that's intentional, not a mistake, in other words. And I think as they move that branding issues and whatever other variables into the 7-pack, they're surfacing crap. That crap will ultimately filter out of the system. Now, obviously right now, it's as Andrew pointed out, you throw in a really strong URL in there, it's going to zoom you to the top. And so we're seeing that. People are taking advantage of it. It's an economic reality.
Thanks, Mike. Joy, that's the second part of that question. With the given spam, and obviously, kind of Mike's touched on that it's probably going to be kind of time-based as kind of Google learns kind of what's gone wrong and kind of iron out some of the kinks in the update. What would be your advice to businesses in terms of, imagine you've got a panicking local business owner who suddenly see their listings drop, they're not getting the calls. What would you sort of say to them, about kind of dealing with spam?
You're asking me, I'm sorry.
I would, Joy, actually.
I would, one, I'd report all this stuff in MapMaker, and two, I would go out and take, drink a couple beers and come back next week. You're in a dynamic environment, and you need to take a long-term view. You need to keep doing the stuff that works. You need to make your business more visible offline and on, and with honest, honorable tactics, and sooner or later you will rise further up and the bad stuff will drop further down. And getting your underwear in a bundle about Google seems to me a good way to die an early death.
And we in fact incorporate drinking a couple beers in every one of our client programs.
Absolutely. I think it's the best thing you can do value add with local SEO.
It's usually the end of month one deliverable, usually. Sometimes it's in a week.
Dealing with this audio thing, I can add something to the second question there, which is, should businesses be changing their tactics to compete with spammy listings? And I would say now is a good time. If you're in a market where you see a lot of listings popping up that are violating Google's guidelines, or they're not real addresses, and I'll give an example because I'm seeing a lot of questions on what constitutes a spammy listing. So, for example, I saw a dentist listing in Miami that used an address that was a condo building as their address. Obviously, dentists don't work out of their homes. They're obviously using this tactic to try and get ranked on Google. They had a fake business name, so the title of the business was a keyword instead of their actual business name. Getting rid of these listings is actually pretty simple if you report them in MapMaker. If you're a business that's not following Google guidelines, the MapMaker community is your enemy. But if you're a business that is following the Google guidelines and you're seeing the opposite where your competitors are not, now is the time where I would honestly get really familiar with MapMaker guidelines, get really close with some of the RERs and MapMaker employees, post lots on the MapMaker forum. I have a link that I gave to Myles before that has a list of resources of what to do and not to do as far as reporting spam on MapMaker. But I've had a huge success in getting spammy listings taken down. One thing to note is that there are two different types of people that can review edits in MapMaker. One are Google listing editors, which are Google business employees. They tend to not really care much about spam. I've had most of my spam edits denied by them. The Google reviewers are the MapMaker employees, and they seem to be a lot more eager to get rid of spam. Also, if you've ever posted in any of the forums, you'll know the MapMaker RERs and top contributors they really hate spam, so they'll be on your side if you're trying to get listings taken down.
Okay, that's great. I'm back now. Is that any clearer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Odd enough, it's now telling me I'm muted on my screen, which is very confusing. His kind of go-to-meeting caused me some pains. So guys, thank you very much for that. Apologies for the technical issues. Let's jump into our third poll. We've got about sort of 15 minutes to go and a couple more questions. So I'm just going to kick this off now. The third question is, overall, have you of your clients gained or lost traffic since Pigeon? That could be organic or it could be local. Just in general, what have you seen? What have you seen happening? So it's launching that now. Okay, we're going to shut that down now and go to the next question. So this one is, Joy, why don't you kind of carry on with this? Talk about display of results. The results has obviously changed, So why did it say, what was the reason for so many 7-packs becoming 3-packs? And what sort of benefit does this give to the searcher, or what does it give to Google, as Mike kind of talked about there, a kind of quest for cash earlier? What's your take on it?
I totally agree with Mike. The lack of Google Places listings just draws more attention to AdWords. So we're seeing the same thing where click-through ratios are increasing. I think this could be, in my opinion, the only reason why there are less. I know for some industries like real estate, for example, I've seen some of the theories behind why real estate packs disappeared the way they did. I think what I've heard, it makes sense, but it's just a theory, is that Google isn't showing Google Places results anymore for most realtor queries because real estate agents aren't really places. They're individuals and they kind of service all kinds of areas. So you're seeing, results pages that are purely organic because they're better results for the user to kind of browse through listings, see houses and things like that. But yeah, I think the end result is really just better placement for the ads.
Andrew, what's your take on that?
I think a combination of the things that Joy said. There's probably some user theory that they applied that makes sense, like, oh, these are service area businesses, so you don't need a local pack. But it's kind of funny that some of the highest value categories were the ones that got hit the hardest, like real estate and insurance, employment agencies, things like that.
Okay, that's interesting. You think primarily a commercial motive.
Right, but again, they got in our experience, like particularly in real estate. So we have about 40 or so real estate clients that we work on, and they all lost pack rankings, but they didn't lose traffic. They just don't rank for Chicago Realtor anymore. So it's hard to say like whether that's a really net benefit for Google. I guess they may be up there. They're buying against the head terms.
Okay, great, thank you. Jumping on to next question. This is probably one to put to Mike actually. So, looking at Pigeon, you've touched this already. What does this update tell us about how Google looks at local search and the direction they're moving in, and what do you reckon we'll see in the next 6 months in terms of either future rollout of kind of Pigeon 2.0, for example. What can we kind of glean from this?
There, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
And I'm not rambling around in Andrew's brain. I am freestyling.
You are.
I am.
Totally.
Let's see. So the trends I see in Google are move towards knowledge graph, and I see local as an integral part of that move towards knowing the entities that exist in the world and how they relate to searchers. And I see this as part of that. I see brand playing a huge role in that. I see it becoming bigger. So I see knowledge graph as being really critical in local, where they want to give you the answer, right? Well, I think they want to give you the answer in local as much as any place else. So I see this tendency towards these 1-packs as part of that, and I think that will increase, where they just decide this guy's the winner in the market, right? If you do jewelry appraisals Buffalo, you're going to see, can I say her name again, Andrew? You're going to see Barbara Oliver's listing as a 1-pack, right? Well, it's not a mistake. She's really into appraisals. She's done a good job of marketing herself, and Google's making that decision for the searcher to deliver that result. So I think same with the 3-pack. I think you're going to see reduced results, more focused on what Google considers high-quality stuff based on brand. That would be my bullshit projection into the future.
Agreed.
Projections are like noses and assholes, right? Everybody's got one, and they all stink. They all smell. Excuse me.
But obviously you sort of touched on earlier in terms of this kind of spam issue having been prevalent in Hummingbird and other kind of other algorithm kind of updates. It's just interesting knowing for that kind of historical past what we can expect kind of moving forward. I am right in thinking that that Pigeon is still only affecting US local results. It's not affecting Canada, is it, Joy?
It's not in Canada yet.
No, and it's not in the UK yet. So it's interesting that they've been so slow to kind of extend it out to these other countries. That hasn't happened in the past, I'm right in thinking.
I mean, there are rollouts like the carousel that are primarily U.S. based, and it could be a function of inventory, right? It could be that they don't have deep enough content in those markets. For example, in the carousel, photos, and in the case of Pigeon, just enough density of information that they can deliver good inventory at that narrower radius.
Yeah, that's
we don't have the carousel much at all here in Canada. Like, I see it very rarely, even for industries like restaurants and stuff. It's not anything close to what it is in the US.
Yeah, same in the UK. I have seen a little bit more kind of creeping in, but yeah, certainly not as much as is on the kind of US searches that we conduct.
So actually, I just want to jump in with a kind of an obvious projection, but just to add it to the discussion. We have a client that's a national/local brand, and in the arts and entertainment vertical, and they actually have a kind of a relationship with Google. And over the last year, mobile queries to their site and for their search queries has gone up pretty well. But they were basically told by Google that they should expect by this time next year that mobile will be 80% of all search queries in their space. So I think combined with the knowledge graph stuff that Mike's talking about, I think it's most local stuff. Just figure out like what's the best mobile experience, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and this basically takes us into sort of final question, which is about how can businesses future-proof themselves against major updates? Mike, you've obviously talked about doing that kind of good old-fashioned kind of PR, projecting yourselves positively in your kind of community, and that will drive kind of lead generation outside of Google, but also kind of Google will pick up on that stuff. Joy, what's your sort of answer to the question about if you're giving your customers a kind of future-proof solution, what are you suggesting to them?
Yeah, I probably have two recommendations. First, don't set it and forget it. I think this is the problem I see with a lot of business owners. They're like, oh, I'm ranking great today, so I'm just not going to do anything, and then some new major algorithm hits and they vanish. So I mean, always continually make sure that you or someone is working on behalf to increase your search efforts. And then secondly, like Mike's been saying so many times, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I see so many businesses obsessed about having reviews on Google, and then the review filter hit, and they had 90% of the reviews filtered, but they don't have a single review anywhere else online. So if you're collecting reviews, don't just put it on Google. Same thing with where you appear on Google. Don't just focus on Google Places. Put out a few dollars to get an ad. It's not like one of those things that if AdWords works well for you, your business, then it's worth paying for. Obviously, it's what Google's trying to push. So I think fighting that is not really a good idea. And also making sure that you have enough good organic presence everywhere. I think as long as you have a combination of all kinds of things online, you'll kind of be good for any future algorithm update that could happen.
Okay, that's great, guys. We're getting very near the end here. I wanted to just run sort of one final poll before we do. Unfortunately, we don't have time to probably put open questions open to the floor. Apologies to everyone who have asked questions. Hopefully, you've had Linda ask a lot. Linda's also shared a couple of great links to kind of the guys' blogs, the various sites where they've kind of collated some additional kind of sort of Pigeon sort of references and kind of guides. The final part I want to kick off here is kind of a sister one to the last one. This one is overall, have you your clients received higher converting traffic since Pigeon? So the previous poll was about kind of volume of traffic. This one is asking the question about have you seen higher converting traffic, therefore higher quality traffic. Well, a quick thanks to our panelists for taking part today. You guys have been fantastic. Really appreciate you sort of setting your time aside and kind of talking with us and sharing your expertise. So I really do appreciate that. Thanks also to kind of Linda and Colan for handling all the kind of Q&A chat. You guys have worked tired behind the scenes. I've seen a sort of flood of questions coming in and some great answers coming back from you. We've got some upcoming webinars in the series. The next one we have is next week, so a week today on Wednesday. It's local search ranking factors discussed, and we've got David Mim, Andrew's returning for that one, and also Matthew Hunt. So hopefully that will be a fantastic webinar. So please do sign up and join us on that. And then we've got 2 more happening in December on the 3rd and also on the 10th. So please do register for those, and we hope to see you there. Okay, great. So here we have the results of the 4 polls for the evening in almost real time. The first one is, has Pigeon delivered good changes for businesses and for searchers? The overriding answer is it was good for businesses and good for searchers. So that seems like a pretty positive result all around in terms of people's opinions of it. The rest seems kind of equally measured. No one seems to think it's too bad for searchers, though. Everyone thinks it's generally a good change for searchers. More than businesses. Now, has your local search strategy changed? 26 say yes, 32% no, and not yet but plan to. So it looks again like a fairly even split between those who haven't made a change and those who are thinking of doing so. Now, how's your website traffic been affected? Again, fairly nothing kind of conclusive there. Most of it stayed about the same. Some gains, some losses. Seems to again, unfortunately, not be massively conclusive, but that's kind of what we've seen a lot from today's debate. And in terms of the kind of quality of the traffic, overwhelmingly, it's about the same. So all in all, it seems to be not much kind of damage has been done to people's businesses, but people aren't particularly overwhelmed by the changes that they're seeing. So hopefully that's useful for everyone. Thank you again for attending. Thanks, guys, for speaking as the panelists and sort of sharing your time and expertise. And I hope you have a great day. And Linda, I hope your daughter everything kind of goes well with her. Thank you for putting aside your time today.
Talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye now.